So I had this idea that I'm going to build a cabin. I'm going to build a cabin that's off-grid, and it's going to be for the purpose of self-retreat. Not just for me, but for anybody who feels like they need that space. A place where they can reconnect with themselves, with nature, a place where they can just be fully creative without any distraction. Yep, I really don't have any skill sets that make me well qualified for building a cabin, but I am a super hostess on Airbnb, and I'm pretty sure that I can do this. So my husband thought that the best place for me to start was buying a chainsaw. Now I have a confession to make. Chainsaws really scare me. I don't like anything about the idea of this long chain flailing around in the open, potentially ready to kick back, fly off, I don't know, saw my leg off, not really sure. But he suggested I get a battery operated one, and it just seemed less intimidating to me. So I went out and bought this mini saw. The other thing I have to confess is that I could barely hold on to his large saw. It was just too heavy for me to operate and be safe with or constructive whatsoever. But the good news is that I'm well over a week into this project now, and my arms are sore, but my muscles are growing. And, you know, maybe by the end of this, I'll be ready to use that big saw. Yeah, I'm not really quite sure where to tear it off this tree, can you tell? But I'm working it out, and my husband's standing nearby giving me pointers. He says the only way to really learn to do this is to do it.
Did you pinch it off? You know why? Because you didn't cut a release cut underneath before you did that. It's only one way you're gonna learn. Should I quit recording? That's a good way to bend the bar too.
Well, success. My bar is not bent, and my first tree is cut, so I call it a win.
So do a relief cut underneath, about halfway up.
So if anybody's interested, this is a DeWalt chainsaw.
Right.
It is battery operated. It runs on rechargeable 20-volt lithium-ion batteries. It has a 12-inch bar, which actually gives me like 10 inches of usable chain to cut with. So the largest tree I could possibly cut would be 10 inches in diameter. And I'm okay with that. The location that I actually chose to place my cabin sits on our property. We have 34 acres altogether. Mostly there is a lot of cherry, small stuff. A lot of it is already kind of down. A lot of grapevine down there, killing a lot of stuff. So it's a lot of just cleanup that needs done around the building site, and it actually makes me feel good. I feel like it's something that's really kind of improving the quality of the forest there. Pay attention to that piece right there. You're going to see it later in the cabin. So the other benefit to cutting this cherry, collecting the deadfall, is that is all hardwood that I can use later for heating my cabin. So it might seem like the cart's a little ahead of the horse, but I'm actually making firewood right now that'll be used later on when the cabin is finished.
You know cicadas? That's what that. You know something to do that? That's what, you know cicadas?
Yeah. She's getting her gas can, the empty one.
Yeah, so my little 3-year-old's tagging along with us on this day one of cabin making adventure. And maybe you heard her mention the word cicada. If you've been wondering what that racket is in the background, which I have muted down by over 70%, it's the cicadas. actually, let me just turn that up so you can get the full effect of what the 17-year
Down to the pad.
Brood
Abby.
X periodic cicadas are really like.
Pad.
Well, there they are. Those are the cicadas. They're flying out of everywhere, landing on me while I work, landing on the chainsaw when it's not working. I think they think that it is a cicada. It looks like them, and it pretty much sounds like them. They're pretty cool, actually. I'm hoping I'm an amazing carpenter and my teeny cabin lasts for 17 years when their babies emerge. Took quite a bit of struggling and fighting, but I finally got the deadfall trees and the ones that were damaged and needed to go for my building site down into the building site pad area where I cut them into length. I called it chunking them up, but I think the technical term is bucking them to length. So yeah, there I am, Timberjack Jesse, bucking my boards to length. You'll see, I'm still struggling with that whole idea of relief cuts and not pinching off the bar and chain. My husband was right. By the end of the week, I was able to anticipate how the wood would fall much better. Practice did help, and I struggled less and succeeded more. Yeah. The firebox is 8 by 10 and a quarter.
8 inches
By 10 and a quarter.
by 10 and a quarter. This here's too long.
I know.
I'm going to show you a trick. You ready?
Ready. Pro tip here
Sure.
from my husband. It turns out that the bar on my chainsaw is the exact same length as the firebox for my mini stove in the teeny cabin. So I can plan my cuts according to the length of my bar to have my firewood just right. Well, not too much. This is I'm gonna. So what I'm going to show you here is actually my husband's idea. I, at this point, is still pretty absorbed in the process of clearing my building site and opening up the trails that lead to it. But he's a couple steps ahead of me at this point and thinking about where I'm going to put all this split firewood that I am accumulating. So he's suggesting I use one of these totes to create firewood bins that can be transported around later. These totes we've actually collected from a local tan bark manufacturer. The dye for the bark comes in these containers, and we've repurposed them for numerous things. I couldn't help but to notice all the ferns that were growing around this tote. We have several totes sitting around, but only this one was surrounded by ferns. My building site and the trails leading to it are also surrounded by several different species of ferns. So for that reason, I'm calling this project the Fern House. And this seemed like just the right wood tote for the Fern House. I'm going to start out by moving that tote up and out of its current location where it's been sitting for quite a while. I'm going to pull it up to our driveway where I can work on it without having to keep an eye out for snakes or bees or anybody I wasn't planning on hanging out with. I had to start out by taking the plastic container out of the metal frame. Rick had pointed me in the right direction of which tools he would use and how he would go about the project. So taking a stab at it and seeing what I could figure out. The tote's actually pretty easy to move around. It doesn't weigh much. It's just bulky and awkward. So here I'm cutting out version A of the project that I thought Rick and I had communicated really well on. Turns out we overrated our communication skills, and the final project is like a version of Plan D. Yeah, I definitely earned myself a little supervision on this project. And I'm hoping that building my cabin walls goes a bit better than this, but we'll see. When I started on the Fern house project and really got serious thinking about what this project was about for me, it had to include a few things. One was I knew it needed to bring good stewardship to the environment. Using repurposed and reused materials will be a priority throughout this project. Also, the creative energy that surrounds this project is important to me. I want people to be able to have amazing creative energy while they're there, and I feel like it's important that I take part in that journey as I make the space. Perhaps you'll remember earlier I mentioned that I have no desire to use a grinder. It's kind of like a chainsaw in my mind. Yeah, so here we are on day one of the project, and I'm encountering chainsaws and grinders. So, yeah, I took a backseat on this one. Thanks, honey. Well, I'm back to keeping company with the cicadas. It is 90 degrees in Pennsylvania and like 200% humidity. It's an amazing week to decide that I'm going to start clearing a building site and trails. But what doesn't kill you will make you stronger, right? So here I am, starting to go through and clean up the mess I had created the day before and hopefully get my first load of wood up to run through the splitter. I'm really trying to be mindful as I clear the site and the trails leading to it that I'm not being wasteful of any of the wood. All this small stuff can be used as kindling. It'll be perfect as it dries out for the wood stove and cabin. I actually am turning out to be really happy with this little saw. It is the perfect weight for me. I don't feel like my arms are getting tired using it. The batteries are lasting well. The power is maintaining. I have no complaints. I have to say I have already laughed at the thought of battery-operated chainsaws, but I'm pretty happy with my DeWalt. I know I only have about 2 hours today to get this mess cleaned up and transition into the next step, which is splitting firewood. So I want to make the best use of my time, but being brand new to this whole felling tree thing, yeah, it's a little bit of an overwhelming task. It's not just the building site that I need to clear from brush and deadfall timber and unsafe trees. It's also the trails that take me back to the building site. There's about a half a mile of trails that'll take me back to the Fern house building site, and they're well-established trails, but they just haven't been well-maintained over the last several years. So I need to do quite a bit of cleanup to be ready to bring in my construction materials as well as guests. So I'm a little bit like a new driver here with my chainsaw, you know, having to remember to do things like check your gas or check your oil. Only in this case, now I'm making sure I have charged up batteries and I'm having to add bar oil to my machine. Yeah, can't keep this thing going without a little lubrication. So we were originally going to place the cabin somewhere else on our property where there is a nearby well already drilled. However, that space just wasn't feeling right for the project, and I really felt like I was just kind of disturbing the habitat every time I visited it. I thought of this location instead, and my husband was in agreement. And so I spent some time down here, and I just realized that this really felt right down here. I felt like this was a spot that was meant to connect people with nature, and everything about it welcomed me and my project. Does that make me crazy? Well, I'm at the end of my time frame for being down here in the woods today. I've got to get this wood loaded up and taken up to the house. I have to say, it, physically speaking, was a little miserable today. It was hot and muggy and sticky. Had the cicadas crawling on me. But honestly, to have a little bit of time today to spend in the woods, to focus on this work and just be very aware of what was around me was so good. It just really left my mind feeling clear and ready for whatever the next task of my day is going to be. Wow. So one last look around. What a difference. I mean, I knew this was the right spot, but now it's kind of looking officially like a spot. It feels really, really good. There's still 3 trees down here that need to be cut down. They're dead trees, they're a safety hazard, but they're pretty large too. My husband will be taking care of those. After they're down, there's going to be another phase of cleanup that has to happen down at this site. Firewood making 101. Remember when you hit your head last week?
Last week, I did it again this week.
All right. Well, you know how mad that made you? Yes, that's what you need to unleash onto that piece of wood.
But it wasn't the thing that hit me in the head.
Pretend it was. Yeah, so everybody should have that experience of splitting wood by hand just once, but yeah, just once is probably good enough. And then there's the long splitter. Yeah, look at this guy's mad skill with the log splitter. I was completely impressed and felt like I was once again the recipient of pro tips. Yep, so I practiced and practiced this technique. Split, flip, split, done. Why are we making firewood for a cabin we don't have yet, Mom? I assured her she would be thankful this job was done now, come October when the weather was cold and we wanted a fire. Besides that, there's a few more logistical things and a little bit of research I need to do before I actually start the construction of the cabin. At this point, I'm thinking I'm about 2 weeks out from obtaining my first materials and swinging the first nails into place. So I might as well use my time wisely. I am already handling this wood as I clean up the building site and maintenance the trails, so I might as well split it and have it ready for this fall when we're going to want it. So what I brought up was a 50-50 mix of cherry and pine. Now the pine doesn't do me any good. It's not clean to burn indoors and increase the risk of chimney fires. So it all went in a pile to the side. It'll burn outdoors for campfires and such. But the cherry is ideal. It burns clean, and I just need to get this cherry dried out. Some of it is already dry, but we'll split it down and let it air dry in my wood tote container. The lid will go on top to make sure the rain doesn't saturate it at all, and it'll be perfect for burning this year. Yes, we have succeeded. It is finally time to stack our mini rank of wood. It is kind of funny. It is a teeny cabin I'm building. It is the smallest wood stove I've ever seen that I am purchasing. And I have now split the most adorable little pieces of firewood to go in that stove. But I have an adorable little helper too. She fits right inside of the container, so it sure makes stacking a breeze. This is just the beginning of what is going to be a pretty awesome adventure in discovering my own abilities to create things that I never thought about creating before, such as shelter. Well, thanks for watching, and hit subscribe below. This is going to be an adventure for me, and in the very least, it should be entertaining for you.